Chapter 5. Brynn's head was a chaotic hailstorm the whole night, even as she slept. At the edge of consciousness, one question pierced through her over and over, keeping her from slipping into a deeper sleep. When's the last time I had a friend? Snapshot memories kept vying to answer, one hazy face popping in and out. Iris, passing notes in class, giggling together at recess, playing games in her room. And then Iris stopped showing up at school. Little Brynn didn't know how to find her, talk to her. She was only 9. Her mom was sick. Her dad was distracted. She didn't know what to do. Brynn's eyes fluttered open to a pitch-dark room, punctuated only by the minimal light given off by varied electronics. The window offered no help, with no early morning glow. Brynn sucked in a scratchy breath, throwing the back of her hand over her eyes. There's no way I can sleep now. Exhaling the painful breath, Brynn pulled her hand back to her side, surprised to find small streaks dampened the skin there. Sitting up, she pushed the covers off her and glanced at Marietta in the small twin bed, pressed right up against the wall. Her bright blonde hair reflected back even in the minimal light. Brynn tiptoed around the 2 beds, desk, and dresser in the small room, securing her mother's necklace and packing her bag for the day. But she left it behind as she snuck out of the room and then the house. Leaving the duplex behind, she could just see the first hints of dawn on the horizon. By the time she made it to those seaside steps, it was light enough that she didn't feel jumpy at every stray sound. Kneeling down, she untied her shoelaces. As she rocked back, her breath huffed out in a visible cloud when the bottom of her thighs hit the cold concrete. She didn't care though. Once she rolled up her pants, she plunged her feet into the ice-cold water. The biting air was nothing against it. The frigid water felt like pins and needles pricking her exposed skin, but it calmed her. Even as shivers started rolling up and down her body, her breath finally came easier. She stared out at the dark waters. Under the brightening sunrise, the ocean offered no safety. Just a dark unknown. Staring into it, the face of her childhood friend reflected back at her. Iris, where are you now? With the water numbing her legs, she let the memories held behind the dam loose. Closing her eyes, she saw her mother, impossibly tall, moving around their kitchen. When she noticed little Brynn staring, she smiled with the warmth of summer sunlight. She picked up little Brynn, who fit snugly at the time against her mom's chest, and she started to dance with her. Brynn threw her eyes open to the angry, crashing tide. She drew in a deep breath, withdrawing her soon-to-be blue feet from the sea. The burning cold air hit them worse than the water, but she just slowly released the air in her lungs. As she waited for her skin to dry enough to put on her socks, she glanced around. Looking out toward the street, her mind transposed Finn's silhouette where he'd been that day, blocking her view. She let the memory run its course. "Friends, huh?" she said to the lapping waves. What does that even mean? Even as she laced up her shoes and prepared to leave, the sea never answered.
Finn. Finn stood at the center of his migrating group, chatting with Arden and Avery as they made their way toward Bryant Hall. "Have you finished your part yet?" Avery asked pointedly, staring at Arden. Yeah, Arden said, and Finn held back a snicker. There's no way. The look that Avery shot Arden told Finn he knew that too. The resulting groan emphasized the point. And the marketing section? He asked, sliding his gaze to Finn as if Arden didn't exist anymore. He's gonna do Arden's part, just like old times. Yeah, Finn said. I got you, bro. One more page, and I'm done. Avery looked at him with eyes that reminded him of a pleading Puss in Boots. He had to cover the smirk lifting the corner of his mouth. You making me look bad, dude, Arden said. Finn let out the laugh this time, his fist meeting Arden's arm. Then pick up the slack, bro, he said. Finn. He whirled around. Skylar, trailing several paces behind them. She was practically jogging to catch up. Finn glanced at Arden with a cocked brow, but Arden just shrugged his shoulders as he eyed his girlfriend. When she reached them, she fell in step between Arden and Finn, matching their pace even as she huffed out of breath. Tell your sister that I'm sorry, she said, once her breathing was normal again. My mom's having surgery in a couple weeks. Is she okay? Arden asked, his eyes glued to Skylar's face. Skylar's head whipped around, her expression softening once she met Arden's gaze. She'll be okay. But there was a catch in her voice that made Arden's eyes narrow. Dropping her head, she sucked in a heavy breath. Anyway, she said, looking back up to Finn, she's getting it just before the break, and I want to be there after to keep an eye on her, so I won't make it to Rose's wedding. Arden threw his arm around Skylar's shoulders as his eyes slid to Finn with a meaningful look. He's not coming either. Finn nodded at Arden, and he nodded back. Please tell her I'm sorry, Skylar said. Finn flashed her a smile. She'll be fine, Finn said as they entered the hall. Don't sweat it. Passing through the threshold of the class, Finn's eyes scanned the back rows, landing on the fiery red bun in its usual seat. I'll catch you guys later, Finn said as he headed for her row. He heard their questions, felt their stares on his neck, but he didn't look back. Hey, he said once he was in earshot, this seat taken? He gestured to the open chair next to her. She glanced up at him. It's a free country, she said, smirking before the words even left her mouth. He laughed. Right. He dropped his bag next to the seat, settling in. As he unzipped it, he heard her pull in a ragged breath. How are you? She asked while he reached for his tablet. Making conversation? The tablet gripped in his fingers. His hands stopped, hovering halfway inside the bag. He glanced at her, noting her stiff, upright posture as she stared ahead at the absent podium. She cleared her throat. Stop staring at me, she said, still looking straight ahead, but her lips twitched. I'm good, he said, unable to wipe the grin from his face as he brought out the tablet and set it on his fastened desktop. You? Silence answered him as he unlocked the device. I'm good, she finally said, as if it was an afterthought. Good, he said, amused. Are you working at the bar tonight? Head whipping around, she met his eyes again, hers reflected like emeralds. No, she said, I'm working at my other job tonight. That's a shame, he said. Why? She asked. He shrugged a shoulder, looking down at his tablet. Just thought about going over there tonight. She said. Do you ever even study? He brought his hand over his heart like she'd wounded him. I'm hurt, he said. Well, do you? Brows raised, she threw him a scathing look. He pursed his lips into a hard line to hold back all of his amusement. That only sent her brows further toward her hairline. That's not helping your case, she said. Of course I study, he said, once he trusted himself to speak again. I happen to have a 3.7 GPA. I don't know if I believe you, she said, her tone airy, even with the harsh words. I'll pull up my Dwinligue account right now and show you. His fingers brushed over the university's app on his home screen. No, she said. I believe you, I guess. He said. I'm betting you have a 4.0. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For all of that, and you don't even... I have a 3.9, she said, cutting him off and glancing ahead. Stupid chem class in my second year. The words were nearly a grumble, but the frustration scrunched her face in a way that reminded him of chittering squirrels when you got too close. They're so cute when they're angry. Yeah, he said, Chem's a killer. Exactly, she said, the word practically tumbling out of her. If my advisor hadn't signed me up for that class, I'd have that 4.0. He'd never seen her so unrestrained. All right, everyone. The professor's voice echoed around the hall as he nearly sprinted toward the lonely podium, just barely on time as usual. Open your text to page 1523. The words boomed in the room. Finn turned to the notes page on his tablet. Once there, he glanced down at the professor, but a flash of movement caught his attention. Following the disruption, he noticed several of his friends turn their heads back to the front of the class.
Brynn. Brynn sat in the living room of her apartment, studying for her digital libraries and information retrieval midterm when her phone buzzed on the coffee table beside her textbook. The sheer echo of vibrations against the glass made her jump. Does Benji need me at the bar again? Ugh, it fell out of her mouth and was swallowed up by the empty apartment. Picking up the phone, she glanced at the lock screen as she processed the message under the familiar number she hadn't yet added to her contacts list. What's up? Finn's message read. She blinked at the phone until the screen went dark. What's up? What does that mean? Shaking her head, she put the phone down next to her textbook. Just as her eyes slid back to the text, her phone buzzed annoyingly loud again. Ugh. She picked the phone back up and was caught between the desire to tear out her eyes and the bubbling laughter fighting its way up her throat. Leaving me on red? Sighing, Brynn typed that she was studying for her library sciences class. Clicking send, she barely had time to lock the phone and move to put it back on the coffee table when it buzzed in her hand twice. Library sciences? That's a thing? She rolled her eyes, but typed back a bit about it anyway. As she did, she felt a slight tug at the corner of her lips. Once she sent it, his 3 little dots were instantly in motion, and a second later, his response popped up. That's so you. Her breath caught in her throat like peanut butter had glued her mouth shut. Heat radiated out from her chest like he'd branded her there. How can he even say that? Well, what's your major? She typed back. The reply was instant. Marketing. That makes so much sense, she thought, before typing it back to him. In a volley of texts, they talked about midterms and mixing drinks and other stupid things. When the clicks of the front door unlocking broke the silence, she glanced around the room, confused. Marietta would be coming home soon, but it was too soon. Wasn't it? Her eyes shifted to the clock on the wall. I've been texting for 40 minutes. It had only felt like 5. Oh, Brynn, Marietta said once she got the door unlocked and open. Hey. Hey, Brynn said, putting the phone down like it was a bomb about to go off. She tucked stray curls behind her ear to better look at her textbook again. By the way, Marietta said in an almost sing-song voice as she dropped her backpack and untied her shoes at the door. Happy birthday. Those 2 words punctured her like a bullet to a balloon. Freeing her red curls behind her ear, she used the motion to cover her attempts to manipulate her face into a grateful expression. Thanks, Etta, Brynn said, looking to her roommate with her manufactured smile. Hey, she said. Brynn, are you sure you don't want to do anything to celebrate? Celebrate? She swallowed hard. No, she said, trying to keep her voice from pitching low and betraying the rising panic. I'm super busy with stuff, and then there's midterms. So, I'm fine. Thank God midterms fall in November. Okay, she said, but her voice dropped a bit. When Brynn glanced at her, Marietta's lips were drooped in a frown as she picked her bag back up. A pang shot through Brynn, and she pursed her lips. Hey, Brynn, she said, fiddling with a strap on her bag. The change in Marietta's voice sent bees swarming in her stomach. Yeah, Brynn said, and she couldn't help the slight waver in her voice. Yesterday, she started. Did I see you and Finn Whitaker walking around the school? Brynn's thoughts flew right out of her head. She stared at Marietta, who only looked after the silence stretched so long. Brynn wanted to say something, but no words formed. Was he who you went to meet for lunch? She asked. Brynn dropped her jaw to speak, but all she could do was nod. Marietta's mouth quirked up in an odd way Brynn had never seen before. I know Finn a bit, actually, she said. A couple years ago, when Kay and I used to party a bit, he was everywhere. Meeting Brynn's eyes, hers were like lasers. A friend of mine, she said. She actually liked him a lot. They hooked up a couple of times, but she said it couldn't be anything more than that. What do you mean? The words tumbled out of Brynn like trapped factory fumes released to the outside. So, that was you, Marietta said, almost gasping. But she dropped her bag and crossed to the other side of the living room. Yeah. It was just a whisper. Marietta dropped into the couch opposite of her. My friend said that Finn, she started, looking out the window like she was conferring with her friend right there. Well, she said that he was closed off or something like that. They'd hook up and party and stuff, but that's all it was. When she tried to get to know him more, he just gave nothing. Oh, Brynn said, but her head was spinning with every conversation they'd ever had. Do you like him? Marietta asked, interrupting her hurricane-swirling thoughts. Do I like him? We're friends, she said, repeating what he'd used, but it still sounded like a foreign word to her. Friends, Marietta said, and her brows shot into her hairline. Really? Are you two? Brynn stared at her, wide-eyed, bewildered. We just talk, she said. So, you're not hooking up, Marietta said. Brynn blinked a couple of times. No, Brynn said. He doesn't think of me like that. Really? She asked, almost dumbfounded to Brynn's ears. I'm the one who's confused. Really? She said, and Marietta's eyes softened as she looked at Brynn. Okay, I'm just worried, you know. That whole thing really fucked up my friend, and I don't want that to happen again. Are we friends? Is that how she feels? Just be careful with him, she said, leaning forward as she locked Brynn's gaze. He sleeps with a lot of people, and that's fine. He can do what he wants, whatever. But if that's not what you want... She was practically not on the couch at all with how far forward she'd leaned, but her eyes stayed on Brynn. Her throat constricted, pressure building behind her eyes. "Thank you," she said, "Etta, for looking out for me." Marietta pulled in a breath that just stayed there, locked in her chest. When Brynn started to worry that she might suffocate, Marietta finally exhaled with a smile that lifted her whole face. "Hey," Brynn said, glancing down at her textbook. "When's the next game night?" When Etta didn't respond, Brynn peeked up at her. "First Saturday, every month," she said, once their eyes met. Her whole face was beaming.
Finn. Finn sat on the couch in the shared house Arden and some of the guys rented. He had a textbook open on the coffee table, a beer sitting by the book, but they both laid untouched. Staring at his last, unread text to Brynn, he set the phone down next to his textbook and started scanning the pages again. She takes forever to reply. "You sure she's just a friend?" Finn's gaze slid to the source, Avery, sitting across from him as they worked on their business capstone. Avery eyed Finn with cocked brows. "What?" "That girl," Avery said, pointing his pen at Finn with unnecessary flourishes. "You're talking with her now, aren't you?" "Who?" Finn asked, dropping his gaze to his textbook and with it, his prickled attention. "You ditched us during class to sit with her," Avery continued. The skepticism in his tone pulled his focus again. "I didn't ditch anybody," Finn said, cocking an eyebrow. "Well," Avery started, "you kinda did, dude, and even after you said you got stuck back there last time." "You definitely didn't get stuck this time," Arden said, a pool stick in one hand as he leaned over the back of the opposite couch, joining the conversation. Finn felt his friend's stare burning a hole in his forehead. He nearly groaned. "You guys all hang out in other classes too." "You never have before though, dude," Arden said. "Yeah," Avery said, glancing back to Finn, and that excuse was kinda lame too. Finn's gaze flew from Avery to Arden and then back to Avery. "What excuse?" "That you're friends with that girl," Avery said. That itchy ant feeling crawled up his spine. "I am friends with her," Finn said, unable to keep the annoyance out of his voice. "Dude," he said, snickering, "you don't have to hide it." "Arden," Ender called from the pool table, "it's your turn, man. If you don't get over here, I'm gonna take it for you." "Fuck," Arden said, rolling his eyes as he straightened up from the back of the couch. "Ever heard of fucking patience, dickwad?" The curses had no effect on Ender whatsoever. In fact, he smirked at Arden. When Finn's gaze fell back to Avery, his friend was still staring at him. He sighed. "Hide what?" he asked. "You're hooking up with her," Avery said, voice low like they were gossiping teenagers, "right?" "I'm not," Finn said, pitching his voice louder. "We're friends." "Really?" Avery said, disbelief dripping in every letter of the word. "Yeah, dude," Finn said, picking up his highlighter to start searching the textbook again. "It's what I keep saying." When only the chatter of the guys at the pool table filled Avery's silence, Finn glanced back at him. "It's not like you," Avery said, his eyes wide enough to leave thick white outlines around his brown irises. "I don't think I've ever seen you chase anyone." Finn shrugged, tired of the conversation and the interrogations. "We're friends." Thinking it sent him back to their walk and helped his muscles relax now. "Why?" Avery asked, but he heard him flip pages in his own textbook. Finn glanced around the room. "Why? Why do you even care about her?" Avery said. Finn's eyes landed on Avery as he typed something into his tablet while reading from the text. "I mean," he continued, his gaze sliding up to Finn for only a moment, "what's so special about her?" Finn's memories of Brynn assaulted him, the look that pulled his feet to her, their conversation at the bar, their lunch in the dining hall, all of it. "I don't know," Finn said, shaking off Avery's question, but Avery stared at him instead. Finn shrugged as he started typing on his own tablet. "She's cool," he said, but he couldn't form words around the rest of it. "That's all." "Whatever, man," Avery said. "Let's just finish this." Finn grunted his agreement. Yo, Arden, Avery called over to him. Get your ass over here and finish your fucking part, dude. Finn's head was foggy, but he glanced up in time to see Arden flash Avery the middle finger.